I find music a useful distraction. A focus tool.
She's making playlists. She likes to listen to MP3s when she hunts. It's like her own eternal soundtrack, you know? Darkcore, trip-hop, whatever kids are listening to these days.
I think I could live the whole rest of my life without seeing another movie about a quirky hitman. Michael Fassbender, he's cold, he's calculating, he's antisocial, but he listens to the Smiths, and he eats McDonald's without the buns, and he does yoga. I feel like I've seen this character before, I feel like I've seen this movie before, and I could just live my entire life without another movie about a quirky, antisocial hitman. That said, I liked this movie once I settled into it. Once it got going, once it sort of got past. My problem with the first 20 minutes is so it's all done in voiceover. It's just Michael Fassbender. He's hanging out in an abandoned WeWork, and he's waiting to get the job done. He's waiting to snipe some guy. And my problem is not with the voiceover necessarily. My problem with this film's dialogue in general is that it's all very kind of derivative. There's a lot of dialogue that's like, there's 6 billion people in the world, man, and what's one less? Or there's parts that are like, somebody once said a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Don't tell the bush that. Just this kind of trite, derivative, kind of trying to be cool sort of dialogue. Am I supposed to think this is cool? Am I supposed to think that what this guy is saying is like cool and nihilistic and edgy? It's a bunch of this very sort of stock, corny, the kind of thing you get a lot in the kind of mid-2000s, when after Tarantino started this whole trend of fast-talking hitmen and assassins, you had all these knockoffs like Lucky Number Slevin, and you had Smoking Aces, and this isn't quite like that, but the dialogue does sort of sometimes veer into that derivative place sometimes. Another thing that the movie reminded me of initially, and it seems to have reminded a lot of other people as well, is it reminded me of the Hitman games. I've played those quite a bit, and there's elements of this movie in the beginning that I think it's kind of maybe incidental, or this movie was based on a graphic novel, and it's maybe the game took some inspiration from the graphic novel, because it's funny that this movie it's divided into 6 chapters. If you play any of the newer Hitman games, each one is divided into 6 chapters. He starts out in Paris. Hitman, he starts out in Paris. It's a meticulous assassin. He's very focused on detail. He's very sort of antisocial. There's just little bits of overlap. I'm not saying one sort of stole from the other or anything. Just kind of a similar wellspring, I guess, that these things are drawing from. But the broad strokes of this movie is Michael Fassbender is a highfalutin assassin for hire, and he's waiting to do a job. The job goes wrong, and it's all about sort of him cleaning up his mess. And once it got to him cleaning up his mess, that's when I really sort of got into the swing of things. I would say the kind of whole inciting incident for the film, it didn't really, something about it seemed off. So you're presented with this very meticulous, patient, careful assassin, and he's going to shoot this guy, and there's like a dominatrix lady dancing in front of him, and for as much as this assassin has sort of, really, you're only really going off his narration. There's nothing really to show you in the first place how good this guy is or isn't. You're just sort of going by his confidence, going by his general tone, his attention to detail and preparation. So you've sort of got it in mind that, okay, this guy's the best at what he does. He's the master assassin. But it seems like the mistake that he makes that kicks off this whole movie is just kind of stupid. Like, he takes this very sort of risky shot at this guy where the woman is really just a few inches out of the way. And it seems like, you'd think he would have waited a little bit longer. You would think for as great of an assassin as this guy would be, and as patient and as thorough, he could have waited just a little bit longer until the woman was out of the way and he had a clear shot. Maybe that's part of the point of the movie, I guess, is that he does sort of make this very obvious mistake. I think he says at one point, like, there's no such thing as luck. So maybe if it had been a more sort of understandable mishap where it like really was out of his control, maybe that would be sort of not the point of the movie. I don't know. There's a really great fight scene in the latter half of the film. I was really impressed by sort of the choreography and the way just both performers were kind of going real hard on that fight scene. You know, some fight scenes you can kind of see that they're pulling their punches, or it's cut up so many times that nothing really feels real or visceral. This one, it feels like both guys were just kind of like really going at it, really kind of throwing themselves into stuff. And I thought that was a really well done fight scene. It's a very sort of meticulous, sort of procedural type film. So in that sense, it's very satisfying. You get to see sort of the planning, the lead up, and then the execution. And it's nice to see like a well executed plan come together. I think the scene with Tilda Swinton really helps to give a lot of clarity to everything that's going on, to Fassbender's motivations. What is it? He's just called the killer in the movie. He doesn't have a name, so he's just Michael Fassbender. The scene with Tilda Swinton, I think, added a lot of clarity of why he's doing this. You know, he's trying to kind of get his mojo back, trying to kind of reassert that yes, this is who he is. He is this calculating, careful guy who doesn't make mistakes. Again, I liked this movie once I sort of settled into it and once it sort of hit its stride. But again, I felt a lot of it was very sort of derivative of a lot of stuff that I feel like I've seen before. I don't think I would ever really watch this movie again. I guess the appeal is that you're sort of seeing David Fincher's sort of fingerprint on it. Like the story might be sort of derivative, but you're there to see David Fincher's cool, cold, cerebral touch. But for me, that's just not enough. This kind of filmmaking or filmmakers that you would call cerebral in general, you know, like David Fincher, Christopher Nolan, I don't really like this sort of film in general. I feel they're very sort of emotionally cold, emotionally distant. They have a lot. There's often a lot of tension, a lot of interesting, engaging plot machinations, but it all revolves around characters who are very sort of thin and cold and distant. And that's just, I don't know. I don't really see the appeal a lot of times. But anyway, David Fincher's The Killer on Netflix. Yeah, it was fine. Okay, goodbye.